Okay, starting video. Oh, there it is. Hey, buddy.
There he is. Oh, dude, this is far too long, man. We should have done this many moons ago.
We really should have, man. Good to see you.
But we're finally doing. It's good to see you too, bud. Long time, man.
It's been a minute. Holy cow.
It has been a long time. I'm trying to actually rack my brain and think of the last time. I can't even remember.
I have no idea. I have no clue. My God.
I know we bumped into each other kind of on the tear on those Friday, Saturday nights downtown. But
they've happened. They have definitely happened.
Yeah,
you good, man? You doing all right?
I'm good, man. Yeah. You know, all things considered, we're past COVID, or at least in my mind, we're completely past it. Like I'm not worried about that shit at all. I'm going to hockey games. I'm going to going to see shows, and other people's hair, and yet somehow I'm still here, right?
I've gone to a whole bunch of shows finally, and it's the best feeling in the world, dude. It's
I know, right?
We saw Viagra Boys, we saw Bob Mould, we saw Gwar, I seen Gwar twice, and it's like it feels like we're back to normal. Like it really does.
Yeah, I mean, I started doing shows as well, and like I was probably out of the count for, I would say, a good, like, at least 2 years. I didn't do podcast shows, like live monthly shows, right? Like,
oh really?
And that for me, like, that was one of the cool things about doing this podcast. Like, if I'm not going to do those, like, I don't know, like a podcast is cool, but like, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And what live stuff, yeah. So yeah, actually, that's kind of where, you know, like a filmmaker, screenwriter. Of course, we talked like a few months back about maybe getting you on to talk about the graphic novel that you'd worked on with the guys in Gwar, man. Like, that is so.
It is super fun, dude. It is super fun. Like I was, when they asked us to come on board for that, it was just a neat moment. Like, we've known those guys for forever, right? Like I think it's sort of like our friendship with them sort of began like in the late 2000s, because whenever Brocky used to come to town, we used to always get him on. Remember Urban Rush?
Oh yeah, Mike and Fiona.
We used to get Brocky on Urban Rush because my friend Laura was the the producer of it, and so she was booking all the talent for it, and so she booked us with Brocky all the time. So it was always Brocky and us, and Brocky and us, and Brocky and us.
Right.
And then in 2012 we did the it was called the 519 Punk Reunion, and it was sort of a one-day punk metal fest. And
yeah, like there was like 10 or 11 bands or whatever that day.
And we had what the story was is we had the Forgotten Rebels to be the headliners, and it turned out that the dude who was setting up the Rebels to be as part of the show was full of shit. He had nothing to do with them, and he was trying to scam our dude back east for the money.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening was I didn't know what to do, so I called a friend of mine down in Virginia, and I was like, "Do you think Dave would do this?" And they're like, "Yeah, he might." Yeah, and so he got Brocky to call me, and we got on the phone, and he was like, "Let's do this." And so we did the unmasked Gwar thing, and then we just all became really good friends after that, and it was it's just become a lifelong friendship with these guys, and it's close and it's intimate, and we're just really good pals. It's just one of those things that just kind of organically.
It just kind of happened,
yeah.
And how cool to work on, like, because you're obviously, you know, a comic book nerd from back in the day. Like obviously, right?
Oh yeah.
And so to work on a freaking graphic novel of that like magnitude is pretty insane, man.
Have you got a copy of it yet?
No, I don't have a copy.
Yeah, I'll get you a comp. I haven't got my comps yet, but I'll get you one. There's been a paper shortage, so Z2 is the publisher, and they've had like all sorts of paper issues and all sorts of stuff.
I can't remember what's the one on the strip there on Gravel Strip.
Golden Age
Collectibles. I checked there a couple times. They didn't have it, but
yeah. I think it's delayed till like the second week of October now. I think it's when it's finally coming out. Like we the mail order, the ones that were done through Z2 and the ones that were done through Gwar themselves are those orders all got filled because that was like the special ones.
Yeah.
And, I got it actually. One second.
Oh, nice. Dude, like, look at the Star Wars guy in the back, man. Like, holy shit. That is the real deal, man.
TK over there. Oh yeah, there's all sorts of stupid Star Wars stuff in there. So there's the book.
Yeah, right.
The big special edition one. It's like huge, and then there's the. Yeah, I'm really super proud of it. You know, it's just like.
Of course, man.
It's like fantastic.
Brilliant.
And it's super rude, which is great. So
well, wouldn't be any other way. It's Gwar, right?
Well, yeah. And we had the opportunity to put Hitler on the other side of on the business end of a glory hole. So, you know, that was absolutely worth it. So, just doing my part, you know what I mean?
What did you grow up like reading on DC, Marvel?
I was a G.I. Joe guy growing up, surprisingly enough. I loved the G.I. Joe books. I thought they were just amazing. And I remember getting the first one and just kind of falling in love with that particular book. And I ended up, like years later, Mikey and I ended up adapting. Mikey's my brother. We do all our writing together.
Right.
We ended up adapting it. And as a screenplay, we basically took issues 1 through 25, or 27 really, and issues 1 through 27, and sort of making that sort of the structure of our script. And it sat at Paramount for a couple of years, and I thought it was going to happen, and it just didn't, and it was a heartbreak. It was a heartbreak to see that one go away.
Did you get into remember Marvel put out the NAM?
I remember the NAM. Yeah. Absolutely.
That was awesome. That was
I never read the NAM. I read I loved Sergeant Rock, and one of my favorite Sergeant Rock books is DC did a series called DC Comics Presents back in the day. Yeah. And it was always a Superman team up. Like it was always Superman and somebody do something. And number 10 was Sergeant Rock teams up with Superman. Okay. And Superman gets thrown back, and he gets blown up, thrown back in time, and he gets amnesia. So Superman doesn't know who he is, but he still has all the powers, and he's fighting with Easy Company against Nazis. Nice. It's genius. It's just absolutely genius. I love it.
And like, can you believe where we are present day? Because back in the day, like I was called always like a nerd, and you know, like people kind of bagged on you for reading comic books and being in that world and getting entrenched into that, you know, that world. And isn't it cool, like how far we've come? And now there's like, it's almost, Maddie, like to the point where it's like overkill on movies being released. Like we're almost like too far gone now.
Yeah, now it's like at the point where the nerds don't even care anymore. Like we're just sort of like, oh, really? Is it still going on? Okay, I guess.
Yeah. All right, I guess.
It was it's funny. It's like I've known Kevin Feige from Marvel for 20 some odd years. We were on the first XMen together, and he was like an associate producer. So he was sort of like kind of like starting in the business and stuff like that. And so we used to sit around and talk nerd shit all the time. It was like all we did was talk nerd shit. And then he went off and turned into Kevin Marvel. Like it's just insane what he ended up doing. So
it is insane. And like the X-Men for me, like I don't know about you, but the X-Men for me was like the one that really truly pulled me in.
Oh yeah.
It was the franchise. DC anything, like it was like the one, right? And like here you're like working with them in like the was it like the late 90s, early 2000s?
We did the first one in we did the first one in 99, and then we did it was, you know, nobody bet on us. Nobody was in. I don't think they knew what it was. I remember a studio executive calling it a little Power Rangers movie. They didn't know. No. I don't think they knew what it was, and it was this little group of guys making this movie, and it was fire in a bottle, and we didn't know. Like it was tough. It was a very difficult shoot, and I got brought in to be videographer, so I videotaped everything, and I think I shot about 180 hours of footage on that movie.
How fun is that though, right? Like,
oh yeah, dude. Hugh Jackman's audition is out there somewhere, and Hugh Jackman getting offered the role is out there. Like
Really?
Oh yeah, the videotape of I was shooting it, and what had happened was we were shooting Hugh's audition, and he came up and he did a screen test with Famke Janssen and Anna Paquin, and we were shooting in Toronto at the time, and we were shooting at what was it called, Roy Thompson Hall, up right behind the CBC building.
Okay.
And Hugh came in, he waited all day. We finally put him on camera, and Brian, the director, had gone off to a corner with a monitor just to watch it on a monitor, and a kid came up to him, just a security guy who was working at the place, and he leaned over, he looked at the monitor, and he said, "Is this the guy they're going to get to play Wolverine?" And Brian goes, "Well, I'm not sure." And he goes, "Wow, that guy's fucking cool." And that was the moment he decided to do it, to hire him. And he went over to him, and on videotape, I've got somewhere, like, I know where it is. It's down in LA, but it's this great videotape of Hugh Jackman getting offered the role. And I remember Brian going up to the producer, Ralph, and saying, "I want to hire this guy." And Ralph was kind of like, "Oh, we don't know who he is. We know we still have some time to,
Yeah.
And Brian goes, "Fuck it, let's make him a star."
Wow, no shit. Because like, wasn't prior to him getting into that role, wasn't he doing like some musical shit or something like that?
Oh shit, yeah. He was Oklahoma. Like that's how he had been noticed, was he did Oklahoma in London, and Lauren Donner, the producer, saw him in London, and next thing you know,
crazy.
She became Wolverine. It's just craziness. It's just madness.
Which power would you want to have, Matt? I'm sure you've thought about this.
Oh my God. I'd probably have to go with Professor X's stuff. Yeah. I'd have to go with Professor X power. That's too good. To be able to manipulate people's minds all day long, that would be great.
Yeah, no kidding. Right?
You get whatever you want. Great.
What are you binge watching lately, dude?
Binging shit. I've been watching a Documentary Now. Is the one that I'm addicted to. Have you seen it?
No.
Yeah, Documentary Now. It's Bill Hader, and it's spoofs. It's spoofs of real documentaries. So it's
cool.
Like they do a spoof of the best one. The one that I love the most is they do a spoof of the Robert Evans one. The kid stays in the picture. They did
yeah.
Grave Gardens. It's hilarious.
Like mockumentary style, and like the Spinal Tap style, or
yeah, exactly. But it's sort of like they're just basically reproducing the actual documentaries, but really funny.
Like really messing with it.
Like, it's really funny. You got to watch it. It's great. And nice. I got into that because of Barry, because I thought Barry was tremendous. And if you haven't been watching Barry, you should watch Barry. It's really great.
No, that's on my list right now. I'm watching that Dahmer.
Yeah, I'm getting my way through it.
Man, now you got to take that. That's like a bad girlfriend. You can only take that in doses,
Oh yeah, man. That's a one episode now.
That's a one, and like, let's just give my mind a little mental.
I'm just gonna take a break after this one, thanks.
Yeah, totally. You're not binging through that one. You're not like 3-4 in a row, right? Like,
exactly. No, it's not the one you want to watch every minute of the day. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's I love Sandman though. I thought that was a great adaptation.
That was great. And I thought they might have fucked it up, but they didn't.
They went a little far afield from the original books. They're not as true to the books. They're kind of like the book, but light. You know what I mean?
Like wouldn't it be cool to get Neil's thoughts on like what he thought of how it went down?
Oh yeah, I would love to know what he thinks.
Right?
I would love to know what Game thinks.
I would kill to know his thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, that was one of my first books that I really, really got into when I after XMen I moved to LA, and I was living at David Hayter's house, the writer, and I was sleeping on his couch. That's where I live, and he was like, "If you want to read a book, read this," and he pulled out 10 graphic novels, the full series of Sandman. And that was one of the first books I read front to back, and I read the entire thing. 10 graphic novels worth of Sandman. It's one of the best stories in
it really is. It's
they're
so good.
They're gonna need 5-6 seasons to do what they have to do. There's just so much. It's just such a dense, it's just such a dense narrative, and I would love to see what Neil Gaiman thinks of what they did. So
yeah, same. And what did you think of? I know we're going way back now, but like, what do you think of the Watchmen?
Oh my God, it was so good.
Like, they nailed it, right? Like, I think that's one of my favorite superhero movies of all time.
Well, David, who wrote X-Men 1 and 2, wrote Watchmen as well.
Oh no shit!
Yeah, he's like literally one of my best friends in Hollywood. He's the
wow,
and he's the architect of that one. That was his dream project. Like, he was during X-Men, he was like, oh man, I really want to write Watchmen. I really want to write Watchmen, and then he got to, and it's fantastic, and I loved it. And it's funny because I remember reading his original script. He gave me the script to read on the airplane, and I was coming back from LA, and I had the script. His script was even better than the movie ended up being. Like, they made some changes to the script along the way, but his original was just, it was so good. It was just
so good. Hey,
yeah, it was fantastic.
When did you know you were going to go down this path?
Gee whiz, that feels. I was in the music business in the 90s, and I spent quite a bit of time in the music business, and my band was sort of like, we were like the go-to opening act for like everybody in the 90s back in Toronto. So we played with everybody from the Headstones to I Mother Earth and I Lay Peace, all those sort of bands. We were like the go-to opener. And during that time, I was always asking the guys in the band, I was like, can I make us a video? Can I make us a video? And they kept trying to want to hire other people. And I was like, let me just do it. Let me make the video. Let me just, and I always knew that is what I wanted to do. Like, since I was a kid, I was making movies as a kid when I was 12 years old. Like, my dad would bring home a video camera from school, and I'd start making movies with the neighborhood kids, and they were always horror movies, and I was always killing somebody. And
ready for the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I always knew. You know what I mean? But it was when they gave me that job on X-Men, and I just kind of lucked into it. I lucked into this job, and next thing you know, I was on the movie. David let me write a scene that's in the movie. It was an intimate relationship. It was part of the brain trust of what was going on, and it was really my education. And that was how I learned to make movies. I learned how to write movies, learned all that stuff. And I got really, really lucky early on. And I just knew at that point that that's what I was going to do.
And didn't you know, you can never know what's right or wrong on Wikipedia, of course, right? But didn't I read that you'd work closely with like the director of The Crowe or
Alex.
The Crowe? Did you work on The Crowe?
I didn't work on The Crowe. I did iRobot with
iRobot. No shit.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great series, man.
Yeah, that was a neat movie, man. That was a fun time. We were on that movie for 13 months. It was a big long picture. And Alex Proyas ended up being a friend that I still speak to today. Like, I've stayed in touch with him for 20 years. And that's the thing, is like the weird controversy about what Will did at the Oscars.
I was just gonna like, how could I not bring that up, right?
Yeah, I know. That just wasn't the dude that I know.
Like, what the hell was that, man? It's so like, and then did you see like the videos after that was like from an older movie and is exactly played out like how it came out in that old movie? It's like, was that fucking around? Or did we get played? Like, it's so weird, right?
It's just, it was weird because to me, that was not the dude I knew. You know what I mean? And like, I remember one day we were on set, and they called Will to set. And I was with them when they called him, and we were on our way. We were going from the trailer to the soundstage, and there was a PA sitting in a parking lot. And I'll never forget this kid. He was all like slouched over, like just dejected, like was clearly like not living out his movie dream. And the best thing I can describe that he was doing was guarding a bucket of cigarette butts. It's the only way I can describe what he was doing. Like there was a bucket of cigarette butts there, and this kid was sitting next to it, going like, "Well, I guess nobody's gonna steal these." And it was pouring rain. He's in his rain gear, and as we're walking the stage, Will clocks this guy out of the corner of his eye, and he looks over and he sees him, and he immediately beelines for this kid, and goes over and he stands him up, and he goes, "Hey, my name is Will," and he shakes his hand, and I watched this kid just kind of like start to lift up, and he goes, "Hey, what's your name?" And guy told him his name, and Will's like, "I'm Will. It's good to meet you," and blah blah blah. And then he said, you know, you're doing a great job. We're all working on the same movie, and we're all pulling in the same direction. And I just want to know you're doing a great thing here, and you're just as important as I am in this mix and all this stuff. And I watched this kid just sort of rise up, you know, and just did this thing. And so that's the Will Smith that I knew. You know,
well, I think that's the Will Smith that we all knew.
Yeah, but it was real. You know what I mean? That's what made that event so baffling to me.
Yeah,
was that was the guy I knew was the guy who was helping the kid in the parking lot feel good about himself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was a weird thing to see that.
What a trip! Like even like I'm nowhere like not even close to within that world, but like I was blown away. Like,
oh man, I was freaked out. I was totally freaked out. I was watching it and I was like, okay, that's not right. And at first I thought it was a gag. Like I thought it was a work. I didn't know what they were doing. And then it got really real. And I was like, oh, that's really bad.
And kind of a weird you know, sorry afterwards, you know, the apology letter or whatever that was published was like, it's kind of like, not really sorry, but anyway.
How sorry are you?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't seem too anyway. You know, before jumping on, I saw something where Danny DeVito was talking about pitching something to Harvey Weinstein in regards to Pulp Fiction, and the fact that Daniel Day-Lewis was offered or originally offered the role of John Travolta in that movie. Did you know that?
No, really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
And so he had to pass it by Weinstein in order to get, like, everybody apparently was saying, first off, no, we're not doing that movie or whatever, like at all.
Right.
And then eventually they were like, when they said, yeah, they were like, okay, Daniel Day-Lewis for that role, and Danny DeVito had to fight to get Travolta in that movie. And I bring that up, of course, because you did the spoof on Pulp Fiction, and it fucking like Quentin Tarantino picked yours.
Yeah, that was wild. It was,
dude, that's crazy, man.
It was the weirdest shit in the world, dude. It was because the way that happened was they had this MTV thing, and we entered one film of ours that we had done that was sort of the one that we thought was funny as hell and this and that. And my brother and I were sitting out on the patio, and I was like, "Do you think that's going to win?" And he goes, "No." And I go, "What do you think's going to win?" And he goes, "You know what? Some asshole's going to they're going to take that hamburger scene and do it from the French perspective, and that'll be what wins." And I went, "Why don't we just do that?" And he's like, "Okay, yeah." So the next day, we had about 45 minutes left before we had to submit the thing. So 45 minutes later, there we were, finished the thing, submitted it to MTV, and the next day they called us and we had won. And Tarantino had seen it that night, and then flew us to Toronto the next day, and there we were with Quentin Tarantino. It was wild. It was insane. It was just one of those things where you're like, okay, this is weird, and it was neat though.
I know, right? And like, dude, I'm trying to, like, you know, be nice and you know, pick through certain things through your bio, and like I'm looking at, like, you know, there's Russell Crowe and there's mention of Leonardo DiCaprio, and like, can you pick a career highlight, or is it just like, no, they're just all it's just too much?
Oh boy, that's a tough one.
Like one, I know that you could probably pick like a handful, but like does one rise above the rest?
Jeez. I gotta say that making a short film with Harrison Ford was pretty up there in weird shit that I've done in my life. Like it was
how the hell did that happen?
I asked him.
No.
I just asked him. I had It's this weird story. I was in LA, and I was at a bookstore, and I used to go to this bookstore and just read books in the science fiction section. I would read Star Wars books and stuff like that. Yeah. And one day I go into this bookstore, and there's another dude there in the bookstore, like sitting there doing the same thing, reading a book. It's kind of like in my space, and I'm getting a little freaked out about it. And I looked, and it was Warren Zevon.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh. And instead of going like, oh my God, Warren Zevon, like I'm a huge fan, like thank you for all your music, I think you're wonderful. I freaked out, and I ran away. And 2 years later, he passed away. And at that point, I realized I'm never going to have this chance again to do anything with Warren Zevon, or meet Warren Zevon, or talk to him, or say thank you. And then we were shooting a movie called Firewall, and Harrison was the lead, and I was working for him, and I was on the phone with a friend of mine in New Jersey, this girl Annie that I was dating at the time, and she said, and we're talking, and I was like, listen, I've got this idea for this short film I want to do, and I really want to put Harrison in it because I think it'd be really funny, and I don't know if I should ask him or not. And she just goes, remember Warren Zevon? And I was like, right. And I went over, asked him to be in this thing, and he just goes, yeah, no problem, I'll do it. And that was it. And we shot this short film with Ryan Robbins. And
okay, cool.
I shot the Harrison footage about 6 months before I shot the other side of the scene, which is Ryan Robbins in a conversation with Harrison Ford. But Ryan wasn't there. But it's a fun little thing, and that's just sort of like a neat. That's just a really neat moment. There's so many cool moments, though. Like just being on the first X-Men movie and knowing what that was and all the stuff that went on with it was just an intense experience. Like that was really, really neat. And to see what it spawned, looking back at it, X-Men is really the one that I would say is the most important one that I ever did. But the Tarantino thing is up there. The stuff with there's so much stuff. Like doing the stuff with Gwar, doing the stuff with Gwar is like way up there. Like that to me, like circling back on it, it's during the pandemic, like Mikey and I, my brother, became really good friends with Mike Dirks, is who we're really the closest with, I think, Gwar. He's become like family type thing. And what was great is that we started writing a Dave Brockie movie together, which we're still working on. We're trying to figure out how to do it. But what was great is during the pandemic, they came to us and were like, or Dirks came to us and was like, we're gonna do an online sketch show during the pandemic. Would you be interested in helping us write sketches? And my brother and I were like, of course, absolutely, I'll be part of that. That's fantastic. So we ended up writing a lot of the sketches that were in their online show during the pandemic. So that was sort of like kept us all kind of going and kept us all happy and that. And then it just became a natural thing that Dirks came back to us with the comic book and was like, let's do it. And so he had a largely, it was incomplete, but there was a lot of book there. And so we came in and started adding the jokes and started adding the appendices at the back and doing a bunch of crazy stuff in it that wasn't there before, and doing a lot of editing work. Ended up spending about 6 months with him doing the writing, and then the art approvals were all coming in, and so that is a huge highlight. That's a major highlight. So of all the things, there's just been so many that it's hard to pick one. But right now, the Gwar one feels like the biggest one. And what's great is that when I was in the UK last month, or in August, and what was great was that while we were over there, Dirks was there with us, and we were he was planning the fall tour, the North American tour, which is here next week. And he was like, do you want to help me write the stuff for the show? And I was like, yeah. So he basically gave me the ideas of what it was. And I sat there one day and just wrote and what we did is we're bringing the comic book to the live show. So now the live show has all these elements from the comic book in it. So if you go next week, they play on Monday night, the 3rd, I think. If you go to that show, you'll see a lot of the elements of the comic book played out on the screens of the show and that. And so it's just a lot of fun. And this is the first half. The next tour is going to be like the next half of the book. So I'm not gonna, I'll go spoiler free, but this is one bad guy in this piece, and then the next tour that they do is going to be the second half of the book with a different bad guy from the book. So it's gonna, so it's going to be neat. It's just going to be a neat experience. And for us, it was one of those things where you kind of pinch yourself now and then. You're like, you know that they're your friends, you know that they're your buddies, you know that you've had this rapport for a really long time, but then you kind of go, holy shit, I'm writing stuff with Gwar. Like, this is insane. Like, and it's just, and to me, that's it's just nerd stuff, and I nerd out on
like straight up wheelhouse stuff.
Oh yeah. And it's I'm like a big, huge fan of my friends and on all levels, like movie friends, music friends, like all of that stuff. I'm so super proud to see people doing stuff. And if I have any sort of way to be connected with it, I'm thankful and happy about it. And it's just, it's what it is. So
yeah, no, I feel the same way. And I got to be honest, and I feel a little bit bad saying it, but I knew that you did some really cool shit over the years. But when I really started to dig in, I was like, fuck, this guy is just a monster, man. Like, it's insane. The shit you've done is crazy, man.
There's been some crazy shit, and
amazing shit, dude.
Hopefully none of it's going to stop. Like, we're our sort of next big signpost that's ahead is my brother and I made a short film in 2011 called Chained, and it was part of remember Crazy Eights in Vancouver? They used to do the Crazy Eights Film Festival.
Oh yeah.
It was part of that, and so we did that. Our friend Rahan came up with the concept, directed it, and Mikey and I co-wrote it with him and produced it. And so we've adapted it into a feature film, and we've partnered with a producer in LA named Brad Payton, who produces and directs movies with The Rock. He did San Andreas, Rampage, the Mysterious Island movies. He did those, and he's this big deal guy, and he came on board to produce this thing. And so, with a lot of finger crossing and a lot of luck, we'll be hopefully shooting the feature version of this thing next year.
Which is, of course, it's a horror movie.
Yeah. It's a werewolf movie. It's an interesting take on werewolves. It's sort of a different approach. And this thing, the short itself won all kinds of awards. It's played in like France. It's played in I think in Rio de Janeiro. It played at Phil Anselmo's. Phil Anselmo did a horror movie festival down in Austin.
Okay. And I know that also the guy in Metallica, Kirk Hammett, is big into horror.
Oh, is he? I didn't know that.
Big time, yeah.
Oh, really? You should put on a film festival.
And apparently he's got like just the craziest collection of memorabilia and all that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, big time.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm a memorabiliac too. I have.
Yeah, same. I'm guilty, man. Like I'll spend pretty good money on shit too.
Oh yeah, like I don't know.
Like, that's crazy, man.
Over there. Yeah, but actually, one of the neat things I have is actually Hugh Jackman at the end of XMen 2 gave me Wolverine's jacket.
Come on.
I think that's the neatest thing that I've collected over the years. Yeah, I've got some neat stuff. I started just grabbing stuff. I think you just see stuff. It's just neat to have mementos of what you've done. And so with at the end of X-Men 2, Hugh knew how much I thought that jacket, that brown leather jacket, was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Pretty badass, yeah.
Last day of shooting, he grabbed me. He goes, come here with me, Mike. Keep it quiet for a second. And we went over to sort of like off to the side of the set, and he goes, go to my trailer. He goes, open the door. there's something for you. It's just hanging on a hook. You'll see it right when you walk in. I'm like, okay. And he goes, take a bag. Don't let anybody see it. And I was like, okay. So I open the door and there's this suit bag hanging there, and I unzip it and open up the suit bag, and there's Wolverine's jacket. Yeah, it was one of those. And so that's sort of my crown jewel. But I've got all sorts of neat stuff. Like when I was with Russell on Superman, it was Man of Steel, and he rewrote the big Jor-El speech at one point. And he wrote it down in pen and pencil. Like he just wrote it all out, and he gave it to me, and we would rehearse it back and forth. We'd do a lot of rehearsing with it, and then I put it in the pocket of my jacket one day, and I walked away, and that was it. Eventually the movie ended. That was the end of that. So like,
got that too.
7 years later, I found that jacket again, and then at that point, that movie had become like an enormous
huge
hit, and huge. And I found this jacket, and I opened it up, and there's Russell Crowe's handwritten Jor-El speech. So I framed that. I've got that. Just nerd stuff, man. Nerd stuff. I love it.
Like big time. Yeah, I've got a few things. I wonder if I could quickly. Got this, and I got these are my two shining. So this is something that I have from Rage Against the Machine.
Oh wow!
And it's a Bomb Track and Fuck the Police.
No way! That's great.
Signed by Tim Comerford, but also Chris Cornell signed it.
Oh, that's wild.
Cornell right there, because it was when they were here for Audioslave.
Oh wow!
So I was backstage interviewing those guys, and at the time I was like, "Fuck, dude, why'd you sign that? You're not in Rage.
Yeah, you ruined my Rage Against the Machine."
But now I'm like, "Holy shit! I got a Chris Cornell signed Rage memorabilia."
That's insane.
And these were given to me by do you know Chico, the drummer for Biff Naked?
No, I've never met him. I know I've met Biff. I opened for Biff in the 90s.
Okay. Yeah,
like right after Gorilla. Like,
oh, nice. Okay.
She was opening for Rhymes with Orange in Toronto at Lee's Palace, and we were the opening act.
All right.
Biff Naked and Rhymes with Orange.
Nice.
I don't know what they're doing now. I have no idea.
But so anyway, so Chico was good friends with Vinnie Paul from Pantera.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
These were the sticks sitting on Vinny's snare after he passed away in the studio.
Oh,
these are the sticks.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, dude, that's intense.
Like, and I'm a huge fan of Pantera, so I was like, what the fuck, right? He's like, hey, dude, I might be able to get you some crazy shit out of, I was like, dude, anything would be great. How about some drumsticks? Fuck yeah. And it comes back. He's like, these were on the snare. There you go, buddy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's bananas.
Crazy.
That is wild.
Crazy, yeah.
Frame. Get a frame.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. They're sitting there collecting dust, like, don't touch that. Nobody touch those.
That's the thing, is like, you never know what to do with this stuff. Like, a lot of times it just like sits in a box, you know, like my Wolverine thing is just hanging in my closet. Yeah. It's like a great jacket. I was like,
I got a jacket here from this jacket here was Chad Kruger's. We're out partying.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're out partying one night, and of course I'm wearing a hoodie like normal, right? And he's like, dude, you always wear a fucking hoodie. Like, why don't you wear a nice jacket? I'm like, I don't usually wear jackets. Takes his jacket off. He's like, this is your jacket from now on.
That's hilarious.
I'm like, all right. I think I wore it like twice, and I'm no hoodie guy.
That's hilarious. That's great. That's a great thing to have.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Anyway, buddy, I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm one of those cheap pricks that I don't buy like a the pro package of Zoom. I'm like, I'm a 40-minute rapper.
Yeah, exactly.
I try to wrap it up within 20, 30 minutes, but man, I could talk to you forever. We should just do beers, man, one of these nights.
Dude, anytime you want. Anytime you want. I'm doing this Bob Odenkirk thing. We don't wrap till Christmas, but weekends, I'm available. So let's do it.
Great for me, man. Okay, bud. Well, I'll reach out and we'll rock a little hang. So you're easy to find before we wrap things up here. You're Reverend Maddie on Instagram and Twitter. Of course, you got the website, thegrangerboys.com.
Granger Bros. Yeah.
Thanks for doing this, Matt.
Anytime, brother.